Hi, this is Laura Wilsey here with Heidi Potter, and we're here to welcome you to week number 3 of the Fundamentals of Horse Speak Winter webinar, not winter, spring webinar. And we appreciate your patience with us for the last minute cancel of the last webinar because our chestnut Andalusian Zeke, who is in the Horse Speak book, did pass away on the Tuesday previous to the webinar. So we were all in for doing the webinar, but then we just really decided we needed the space for being home and honoring that the end of that amazing horse's life. He was just such an asset to our herd and to everyone who came into our property and got to meet him and ride him. And it was just an honor to be with him during his last days. We had him for 7 years, and it was just an absolute treat to be able to help him during his retirement to just retire and enjoy his elder years. So thank you so much for taking your time out of your personal lives, for being with us and learning more about Horse Speak. And Heidi's going to go over a couple things with you folks, and then Sharon will be on with you.
Hi guys, thanks for joining us again this evening. This one of the topics in tonight's series is a paradigm shift, and I actually wrote a story last winter. You may or may not have read it, and we'll include some links to different things in your follow-up email with the YouTube recording, and I'll throw that on there for you to take a look at. But one of the things that became really evident to me over this last year or so of working with Horse Speak is how important it is to really open your mind to not using the tools that you've accumulated over your life. You know, we're so quick to go to what we know, and when you are learning something new, and especially something like Horse Speak where there's so much observation that's required, it's really important to just open up yourself to the idea of listening and watching. When I was training in the dojo, our sensei would often invite his senseis in to teach us. And one of the things he would tell us, especially the higher ranks, is he would say, I want you to think about being a white belt today or tonight. He said, I want you to go into this experience with the idea that you know nothing. Because when you stay in that idea of knowing something, your brain is always comparing what you're seeing and hearing to what you already know, and you miss the lesson. So I encourage you, as you get further into Horse Speak, to kind of open your heart and open your mind to what's new. And it doesn't mean you're not going to bring in your other tools. It's just that make space for this brand new thing to come in, because there's so many concepts that are really going to be necessary for you to get a hold of to open the door to this whole new way of being with horses. And I promise you it's worth the effort. Also tonight, Sharon's going to go over something that I think has been really important as we teach Horse Speak, which is the 4 Gs. And it's going to give you this resource that you can go back to when you're thinking about, I don't know what comes next. I don't remember. The nice thing about Horse Speak is you're not going to do harm. We're working so much with calmness and from the outside of fences and working at 0 and striving for 0 that hopefully nothing really gets big and exciting like it can. We prevent that through this work. But with the 4 Gs, you're always going to have a way to go back to what comes next. And Sharon will get into that with you deeply tonight. And I think it's really going to help you as you progress through this. So thanks for joining us again. And Sharon will be right on.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. And just to recap on some stuff we went over in the past, we talked a little bit about why horses are so scared based on some of their evolutionary process. We looked at the history of horses a bit. We looked at the bubbles of personal space. We talked about herd dynamics, like the protectors and the map makers, the ones who like to go in front, the one who tends to bring up the back. We talked about approaching the bubble and initiating the idea of greeting. We talked about horses making a sandwich, meaning the lineup of what is it like for a horse to be ahead and in the middle and then behind, so that the one in the middle gets to be the center of the sandwich, and why is that important to a horse. We communicated about pieces of the pie, which is the idea that horses can be side by side as well, and they can even, if there's a pile of hay in the middle, they might make a pie shape all the way around, aiming towards the center. Spiraling into the bubble, just opening up the idea of how do you move into the bubble of personal space of a horse once you understand how important that bubble is to them. How is it that you start to, merge your bubble with their bubble in a way that makes them feel good about it. This week, we're going to talk a little bit more about the paradigm shift. We're going to communicate about the buttons, the 4Gs. We're going to talk a lot more about the greeting ritual. We're going to go into facial expressions a bit and how to aim for the go away face and what is that button about. We're going to talk then about coming to some of the connection level of grooming ritual and buddy up and the hug position. We're going to talk about some more of the breath messages. And then at the end, we're going to pull it all together with a couple of interesting little pieces from some horses that I got to work with. Okay. So talking about the paradigm shift. So this is just a quote from Wikipedia about that. In science and philosophy, a paradigm is a distinct set of concepts or thought patterns, including theories, research methods, postulates, and standards for what constitutes legitimate contributions to a field. So when we talk about shifting the paradigm, basically we're coming from a perspective of, for thousands of years, horses were our mode of transportation. They were beasts of burden. And we did have, there's mythologies about horses. There's horses and stories all over from every construct that you could possibly imagine. Horses in art, horses in literature. So there was a certain, beautification of them and artistic treasuring of them and all that. But at the same time, in the functional daily life, it was your truck. So when we are confronting a lot of the training methods that are out there, they were geared for the fact that we needed the horse to do work. And we're now in a place where most of us are looking for a relationship. Even if we enjoy going to shows or we really want to ride at a very high level, whatever that is for us, we're still coming at it from a different perspective where we're looking for the sense of oneness. We're looking for, if you are wanting to ride at a higher level, you're looking for a better performance, and that's going to come from a deeper partnership as well. So in my personal journey to comprehend, categorize, and make teachable the elements of the language of the horse, I had many paradigm shifts. I've sometimes found these changes in awareness simultaneously invigorating and uncomfortable. Letting go of old ways can be challenging, but the horses make it worth the effort. So one of the questions that has come up is, if horses are such scaredy cats, how do they do the jobs that they've done for centuries? And the answer is pretty simple. We are good at selectively breeding for traits. I mean, we've done it in dogs. You can have a Chihuahua and an Irish Wolfhound. So in horses, you can have a Mini, you can have a Shire. So everything in between, we look for a trait and we select and breed for that trait. And then we develop the training methods for that specific type of job. So classically thinking, you don't have a polo pony do logging in the woods, and you don't have a logging horse try to play polo. There's different horses that are designed for those activities, and the training for those horses in those activities is specific to the activity as well. So when we think about horse training, it's important not to lump it all together and just say, well, just train the horse. It's really important to understand something about the breed and where does it come from, what was it designed to do, and what were the traditional training methods for it. Just because it can help us kind of open our eyes to the fact that people were working with these animals for thousands of years in a way that said, this is your job and you've got to do it. So just understanding that a little bit better can help us understand some of the traits that might be looking at us from our horses. So with this in mind, thinking about training and thinking about connection, just the story of Bucephalus, for those of you who don't know, he was a famous horse that belonged to Alexander the Great. And the story is that Alexander was taken to town by his father to pick out a war horse, ostensibly, for his career. And Alexander said, he watched this big black horse jump around and buck people off and be crazy. And he watched him for a while and he said, I think that's my horse. And his father said, what are you, crazy? That horse is nuts. You don't want that horse. And Alexander said, I don't know, I think I figured him out. And the story goes that he took a hold of the horse and he turned him around and had him face the sun. And then he hopped on his back and he rode him directly into the sun at a full gallop or whatever. And then got to a certain place and turned around and came back exactly with the sun behind him so that he was chasing the shadow ahead of him. And the horse went for him. And when the father said, "How did you do that?" He said, "I saw that the horse was afraid of his shadow. So first, I ran him directly into the sun where he would not see a shadow. And when I turned him around, I set it up so that he would be chasing his shadow away." And that is how Alexander helped his horse conquer this fear that he perceived. And in doing so, ended up creating something that we call pair bonding. So when you see horses who are pair bonded together, they don't want to leave each other's side. And if anyone's ever had a horse who's pair bonded with another horse, it can be really tricky because you want to take your horse out and they're screaming for each other and they don't want to leave each other. And my horse once got in trouble at the barn where she originally came from because they had separated her from her favorite pony. And I got there to pick her up, and all the horses were loose, and they pointed at me and they were like, "That's your horse," because she had opened all the gates to go get her pony. So, pair bonding for us can be kind of a pain in the neck. But as far as tapping into it as a resource, when a horse says, "You're my everything," that's a pretty good deal. So a lot of horse speak is designed to have you look like everything to your horse. So as we go through and I say, well, these are the different roles, and there's the peacemaker and the mentor, and there's the sandwich, and there's the guardian, and there's all these roles. Don't stress about it. It's just to be aware that if you're attempting to fill more of those roles for your horse so that you're the safety place instead of the barn, instead of the herd, instead of that bucket or whatever it is, if you're the safety place, then the horse is going to share that pair bonding instinct with you. So we're going to talk a little bit about the 13 horse speak buttons. And I want to say that these are areas of influence that horses use with other horses in their day-to-day activities. And what it means is that on the horse's body are these 13 little spots, and some are very specific. Most of them are kind of general. There's a few of them that are pretty specific, like the tip of the nose and the play button. And the point of these buttons is that horses are using them. They're either using a button on a button, or they're aiming their eye at a button, or they're aiming their muzzle towards a button. And so it depends on how they're lining up their buttons with another horse's buttons, or how they're looking at it or indicating it. But this is how they give and take in their dialogue. This is how they give and take in their conversations. It happens to be that human beings have noticed where horses influence each other for thousands of years, and that we have co-opted a lot of those same spots for our training purposes. So it's very interesting to kind of, deconstruct that a little bit and just say, when I was studying it, I'm like, I notice a lot of people are tickling this button for this, or using that button for that, or, creating a bend in this button for this. And, do horses do that? And so watching the horses and realizing, they do, they have a version of it, and it may or may not look like anything that a person is doing. So this is where the difference comes in. So a person might go in and say, it's a button, I'm going to push it, right? But a horse's instinct is to say, that's an area of communication. And from the time they are born, they learn from their mother, and then they learn from their initial social group how to communicate using all the parts of their body. And that's the keynote. A horse uses all the parts of their body to communicate. They don't have hands, so they can't do a specific sign language with, like I could if I learned it with my fingers. They use everything for their sign language. So when we're learning about where the buttons are and what they mean and how to influence them, then what we're doing is adapting ourselves and the way our body is shaped, and the fact that we do have hands, for something that already exists in a horse. So you're not teaching a horse speak. This is their language. We're learning the basic precepts of how they communicate. supposed to be about
The horse is gone.
the buttons, the bubbles, and the quadrants. And so what I can talk about here is that last time, remember, we talked about the bubbles of personal space and the quadrants in the front. So there's two main quadrants in the front of the horse. There's two main quadrants in the back of the horse. And then interspersed throughout that are also all of the buttons. And so they're using all of these aspects in their communication system. And here we're going to then bring it into the protocols that they use. So the 4Gs is basically their protocol. So I've made it into the 4Gs because it was easy to remember. It's kind of catchy. And you can then sort of figure out where you are in the wheel, okay, of their communication strategy. So when horses come in to each other's bubble and they're going to have a direct communication with each other, you have the greeting. Okay, so we start with the greeting, and then what the greeting is going to move to is a phase that I just call going somewhere. And going somewhere can be done stationary, so it can be just move your face, move your neck. Okay, it can be look the same way. It can be drop your head, pick up your head. Okay, and it's just that simple. It's about the horses are basically matching and mirroring each other's movements. One is becoming the leader, the other one's becoming the follower. Like if anybody has danced and had a dance partner, one person leads the dance, the other follows the dance, but it takes two to tango, as they say. Now, what's wonderful about this part of the ritual is that we can utilize this. This is so great. This is such good news for us because it means that you can keep the conversation very quiet and very predictable, and you can learn a lot about your horse's needs and their values and their wants and their particular personality over a fence line, over the stall, or while you're not doing anything, or you're not attached to the horse through a lead rope. So you can answer a lot of their questions and you can settle their nerves and help bring them to zero. And you don't have to go anywhere. So what's wonderful about that is just realizing as you, like I was working with someone recently and they said, wow, I've always thought I have to go get my horse and bring them to the round pen or the riding ring or something. And then in there, then I do some things and that's where the relationship gets built. And they were just like, wow, because actually going to the stall is where the relationship gets built. How I approach the stall, how I got the halter on my horse in the stall, what I did in the stall before we even left the stall to go in the aisle. All of it is rapport building. So then when you are going somewhere, like the two horses that are actually cantering together, by the time you've moved up to, okay, now we're going to move, you can figure out the movement piece because you have taken the time to understand it at a very slow, easy to process level. So that's valuable because this is what horses do also. So they're going to slide into that mode with you very easily, and they understand that what we're trying to do is communicate with them on that level. What they have to reach is a place of satisfaction with their going somewhere. So two horses will do face, and then they'll do neck, and then they'll finally do shoulder, and they'll take a few steps, and maybe they'll move a little bit like a sandwich, and then they'll move a little bit like a pie, and then they'll go back and front, and they'll turn this way. And they basically sample as many forms of left, right, back, forth, who's in front, who's behind, do you want to drive, do you want me to drive, do you want to look, should I look for you, da, 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 da. They sort all this stuff out. And when they reach a place of satisfaction about it, then they move to the next phase, which is called grooming, okay? So for horses to authentically be in a grooming ritual, it means they've relaxed. They've sorted it all out. They know who's who, what's what, where we're going. They've checked out the environment. They've checked out each other. They've figured out what they're comfortable with. And now they can share space. So part of the grooming ritual is touching, maybe actually grooming, and part of it is not touching, just being together, sharing space. So that's important also because we like to touch horses, and horses can enjoy having a good scratch. They certainly can. But for it to become part of the grooming ritual, it means it's entered into a different way of being, where what you're actually communicating is, we can be social in a really profoundly connected and relaxed way, and we just trust each other. And if you can arrive at that point, you're going to get the best results out of the next level of whatever it is that you want to do. So if you're really in a good grooming ritual with your horse, then getting on them is going to be a lot better, or taking them someplace they haven't been before, or any of those other things, because this is the part of their protocol where they relax into the connection with each other. The next phase is called gone, and that's just they're done with the conversation. They're done. They don't need to be next to each other right now. And you'll see the one horse is leaving and the tail is swishing, and that's all you have to do to signal the gone phase, is just one flick of your hand, and not towards the horse. I prefer to do it down by my thigh to simulate that same motion. But isn't it interesting that people have that motion too? We'll be like, oh, I'm so done with that. And we do this flick. And sometimes I think, after learning all this stuff, that perhaps thousands of years being with horses, we've actually co-opted some of their body language in our body language. And then we just sort of learn it as we grow up as a normal thing. So that's kind of a neat thing to think about. Now, after the gone phase, and I also want to mention, the gone phase can happen with a pause. So if two horses just look away, take a breath, just stop engaging each other for a few minutes, that can be a gone phase as well. If you just step away for a moment, you have a horse on a lead rope, and you step away, and just take a breath and kind of give it a break, that can be a gone phase too. And gone is important because that's where the processing happens. And if a horse wants to do a gone phase with you, you're doing horse speak, and all of a sudden they go, give me a minute, and they want to walk away, and maybe they think, and then they make a full circle and they'll come back, because the next the next phase is to go back to a greeting. So when horses separate, they're going to return. That's part of the circle. So you can know about that, and you can say, okay, they're gone, which means they'll be back. And at some point they're going to come back because they're going to reconnect with me. And so just understanding that that's the cycle, and the gone phase is important for us too, because that's where we get to go, now what just happened? What do I think about that? Do I like it? Did I not like it? Do I need to, what do we need to, what's next? So the gone phase for us is like hitting the pause button, okay? When you see a horse really utilizing the gone phase is when they do walk away, they do take a big breath, and they kind of look at you with a soft expression, and then they go, I think I want more. And it feels great. It feels wonderful, because you've allowed the entire 4Gs to happen, which means that horse now sees you differently. So this is really good to pay attention to. Before we technically get all the way into the bubble with the horse, there's an important phase where we have to secure the environment. And that includes things like kicking the fence posts or touching things. You can, pick up a broom and sweep a little bit, or move a bucket. You can just open and shut a few doors. It's basically, when you see two horses come into a new environment, one of them is going to sort of sniff all the post holes in the perimeter. They're going to check everything out. One of the horses will say, my job, I'll check everything and make sure everything's okay. The other horses tend to stay behind that horse or near that horse. You might have another one say, me too, I'm going to check things too. But usually the rest of them just watch that one. And that's good, because it means that you have one horse deciding, is there a boogeyman or not, instead of 20 horses deciding. Okay. And that's good for us, because I want to be that horse. I want to be the one that checked the posts and looked at the things and opened the door and shut it and said, everything's fine. And if you notice, if you're ever fixing fencing, or you're mucking stalls, or you're doing something and the horses are kind of, passively watching you, or a lot of the horses are taking deep breaths, you hear a lot of relaxation breaths, that's because you look like you've got it. And horses love that. Okay. So another thing is to scan the horizon, and that just looks like you're looking. You're just looking at the horizon, and you're determining what's going on over there. Okay. And a lot of horses will do that. They'll be engaged with you and then they'll go, what's that? Okay. And it's natural. It's part of that sentry role. It's part of a horse saying to another group of horses, I'm on the watch. You guys don't have to worry about it. The bigger one is the sentry breath. And so that's when actually something's a little spooky. Snow fell off the roof, or something fell, or there's a new truck pulls in. And that is a big breath blown at it. And it's like, I'm on to you, boogeyman. So there needs to be sort of an intensity to it. And if you're, you feel weird about that, you're kind of like, the horse is like, I don't buy it. So if your horse needs a sentry from you, you're going to have to figure out how you can, kind of really mean it. And you need to hold that position for 30 seconds to 60 seconds. Don't just go and then let it go. We think that way. They don't. Okay, we can, because we use language, verbal language, we can change thoughts very quickly. Our brain is designed to do that. But when horses are processing information, they need 30 to 60 seconds to process that information. So you just bear with them. The other side of that, you've kicked a few poles, you've swept the floor a little, you scanned the horizon, you blew away a boogeyman. The other side is to then say, all's well. And that means a big sigh, a release. Maybe you nod your head, you look at your horse and you blink and you smile. And they do not mistake teeth for growling, because when I smile, my eyes soften, my cheeks puff up with blood, and I take a big breath and I do little things like this. And so when we smile authentically, that would be weird, right? But when you smile authentically, horses recognize all the other signals that go with it. So they don't mistake you for snarling teeth, okay? Unless you're growling. If somebody's growling at their horse, and that's what it looks like. So just think about looking at the horse and saying, all's clear. Big breath, look down. Because if you don't do the all's clear, you said, what's that boogeyman? Okay, you never came off of it. So one thing is to allow 30 to 60 seconds for the horse to compute, and then make sure on the other side you do a sigh. Big breath, big release. Now you've secured the environment. You've said, I've got it. I'm in charge. I'll make sure that brooms don't fall. I'll make sure that the roof stays up. I'll make sure everything's okay. You ready to talk to me? And that is when horses are more available to start their greeting. So greeting ritual is taught to babies by mommies on day one. Okay. This is an essential part of a young horse's education on how to connect, and they know it and it's already in there. So when we're learning to do it, we have to adapt a couple of things to something that is already innate in them. Now, if you have a horse that's been stunted because they were kept separate from horses for most of their life, they've been stalled too much, maybe it was a stallion that didn't get to associate, or maybe horses have always lived side by side but not in with each other. So there'd be a number of reasons why a horse could be a little bit stunted, or a little bit immature. And you can have stress and frustration that's compounded. So there can be some issues, and we'll talk about some troubleshooting. But basically, you should be able to have a friendly greeting with a horse, and it shouldn't be a big deal. Now, when you are starting your greeting, you want to use your knuckle. This is an important part. You do not want to use your palm, because this says you can lick me. And you say, well, what's wrong? I like my horse lick me. Well, that's fine until there's teeth, or someone doesn't know and has their fingers open, and now these look like all chewable items. And horses don't come up to each other and lick each other. They come up and they greet, muzzle on muzzle. So I want to simulate that. Okay, now later on, if you turn your hand over to give a treat or something like that, that's up to you. But for a greeting, it's knuckle forward, heavy elbow, heavy shoulder. Not this. I'm not greeting, punching my horse in the face. Okay, it's heavy elbow, heavy shoulder, knuckle forward. And there needs to be a little bit of what might look to some people like a slouch or a bow, But that's also similar to us if you think about it. When we greet another person, if you greet a person like this, that's considered rude. If you greet a person and you really want to make a good impression, you smile, you nod, and you bow just a little bit. And that means each person is giving a little bit of spaciousness to the other person. It's mutually respectful. So when you're greeting a horse, there's an urge to have a mutually respectful greeting. And that's with a lower head. So I need to lower my shoulders, because then I'm leading the greeting and I'm saying, let's bring it down. Okay. So those are a couple of important pieces. And also it's important to greet the front between the nostrils. Don't punch, but it's important to greet between the nostrils. When horses first greet, they touch right there. Now they may move to the side and sniff here, or move to the side or move on top. There's all kinds of things that horses can do because there's incredible sensitivity there, and they can carry layers and layers of getting to know another horse and meaning, and there's all kinds of stuff. That's complicated. So for simplification, for us, it's just put your knuckle between their nostrils and then take it away. Don't linger. Just like if you're shaking someone's hand and you keep shaking and you keep shaking and you keep shaking. We don't do that either. It's annoying. So if you put your knuckle there and you're like, oh, the magic is happening, he's touching my knuckle, and you leave it and you leave it and you leave it, after a minute, they're going to be like, what are you doing? Or they move. That's enough. So it's just touch it and let it go. Okay. Formal greeting ritual. And this is really interesting. This took a long time for me to sort all this stuff out. So the formal greeting ritual between two people is you lean in, you shake hands, you make eye contact, you smile, you're polite, you're feeling the other person's hand. You can learn a lot about a handshake, and you then separate, and there's usually a breath and there's a little bit of space, maybe a little turn to the side, and then we do verbal. My name is da-da-da, I do this. My name is da-da-da, I do that. Well, what are you doing? And we sort it all out verbally. When a horse touches another horse they're going to do 3 ultimate touches to sort out all the things, okay? Because they're not going to flip to a verbal switch. They're going to do it all through touch. So when it's formal, it's going to be 1 and 2 and 3. And 3 is in, okay? So a really nicely matched greeting ritual, you will see a touch and a leave and a touch and a leave and a touch and a linger. And then they decide what's next. Now, if you have horses who are highly charged, you might see the touch happen fast. 1, 2, 3. And there might be a pull away, and there might be another one. 1, 2, 3. And there might be another one. 1, 2, 3. And then there might be, right? One of those things because they're highly charged. You might have 2 horses just flare their nostrils, because there's a breath that goes along with greeting. And if let's say you have a horse who doesn't want you to touch their mouth, you put out your knuckle and they go, I don't, they've been twitched, they've got a mouth injury, they've got baggage. They don't want you to touch their mouth. You can just hover your knuckle in the air and breathe at them. So one knuckle. You could put your knuckle and do 3. So you've done all 3. And then take your knuckle away. That would be a 3-part greeting breath. Okay, you've done it. So it doesn't have to be a big deal. It's just a symbol that says we have begun to get to know each other. And it's official. I want to get to know you. What do you think? And if you're asking a horse, what do you think? And they do like 2 touches and they don't want to do the next one, then that's okay. You just wait it out. They come back. And that's the troubleshooting. So the horse won't make the 3rd touch. Just pause, come back to it in a few minutes. A lot of the time, they just need to think. They're like, this hasn't happened before. Or sometimes they do 2 touches and then walk away, and that's all they want. It could be that they breathed the first touch and you didn't notice. They could have done 2, 3. They might have done that. I mean, they can be very subtle. This is their language, not ours. So they can do things that we might miss. Bottom line, if you don't think you got the 3rd touch, don't worry about it. It doesn't mean you can't go forward with your horse. It just means that the horse, if they really did pull away after touch number 2, they're just saying, not yet, let me think about it. And if you do give them that pause, 30 to 60 seconds to process, let them do a gone phase and let them come back. why not? Because it's worth it to see what they have to say. What if a horse greets too fast? Like they want to get it over with. They just go 1, 2, 3, and they're done. Okay, that horse is Speedy Gonzalez. They don't want to take the time. They're stressed, they're anxious, they're young, they're playful, whatever. That's okay too. But I want to go back at some point and say, you know what, let's do this slowly, because I do want to lead the horse, which means I want to lead the greeting ritual. I just don't want to make a big fuss about it. Okay. The horse seems to signal more meaning than you grasp. Could be a mentor who's trying to teach you. You could try mirroring them back. So when you have a horse who's really looking at you and licking and chewing, and the ears look soft, the eye looks soft, everything looks, and they're just kind of looking at you, and you're like, I feel like they mean something or they want something, and I don't know what it is. They might be trying to communicate something else. So you could practice mirroring. You could look where they look. You could breathe when they breathe. You could step to the side, move their head to the side. You could move your head to the side. Just try that and see where it takes you. The horse doesn't seem to want to touch your knuckle. Then you use the 3 soft greeting breaths from where you are standing. So even if there's a horse 50 feet out in the field and you kind of put your knuckle up and go from 50 feet away, you just said, hi, I'd like to get to know you. And you'll be surprised. Horses will turn and go back at you. You'll see the nostrils flare. They use their nostrils. We have to use our mouth to make the right intonation and sound. We can't really do it. Our nostrils don't do what they do. Horse is too high-headed. They come in and it's too much energy. They're just greeting you and they're all up. So back away so that you're claiming the space and you're saying, whoa, let's have more space in this. All right. This is why it's really important to start doing these practices over some kind of barrier, even if you have to have little poles in the ground with like a string across, just to be able to practice so the horse can have their space, you can have your space, because you need to keep your 0. All right. And you want to model 0 for the horse, and you want to model having a polite conversation, because you want to be the leader of the horse, which means you want to lead. Oh, we're going to have a polite conversation. We're not going to do this crazy stuff. So I want you to come down. So you have to set it up so it's easy to ask them to come down. Okay. Using the greeting ritual as a diagnostic tool. It's really a good idea to try to greet as many horses as you can, because it's going to give you the insight that you need to develop a baseline. All right. And you're going to come to understand the messages they convey about their status, their current emotional state, and their readiness. So the better you get at understanding the baseline for greeting, you meet 5 different horses, they're going to have 5 different variables, but the basics of the greeting is always going to be there. So when you just get like, oh, I get it, it's like this and it's like that, when you basically feel comfortable with it in your body, that's when the message they might be giving you can stand out better, because you're not trying to go, what just happened and what did I do it right, and all that kind of stuff. So it's so common for a horse in one of my clinics to greet every single person in the audience that I almost count on it happening. And one of the fun things that can happen is if a person is sitting down and they've crossed their legs, for some reason, horses find that weird. And they will sniff a person's kneecap or stare at them or not move on and touch anyone else. And I've learned to say, put your foot down. And the person puts their foot down and sits square in their seat. And the horse goes, yeah, that's better. And then they move along. So I don't know if they think we're going to fall over or it doesn't look balanced. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's funny. And it happens all the time. So there's a lot of other things they'll pull out to the audience members. They'll linger with someone who seems like they're afraid, or someone who's holding their breath, or if someone's too X, they might look away and drop their head and then come back. They're basically telling the person, drop it down a little bit. If someone's too O and they're looking a little slouchy, they might kind of poke them with their nose in different places and be, sit up more, stick up for yourself. Horses will tell us valuable information about how we are coming across to them in this ritual. And we can understand a lot more about where our horse is at when we understand how to begin our time with them with this ritual. Now, some horses love the formal greeting ritual. I have 2 horses here that I've had 20 years, and they love the greeting ritual. So every morning when I go out, they want to do 1, 2, 3 and look away and nod their head and pick it, make eye contact. They want to do all that. And I have a couple other horses that are like, nah, I know you. Hi, hi. That's it. And they move on with their day. So every horse is different in that way, but knowing about it is a great way to ascertain where your horse is at. So the other side, away from the formal, which is the beginning of the day, or you haven't seen the horse in a week, or the beginning of a new part of your day. So now we're in the riding ring. The horse might say, well, let's be formal now. We did all this stuff in the stall and the aisle, and we did all that stuff, and now we're in the riding ring, and I want to greet you here because this is different. All right, but the informal greeting is just called checking in. And you'll see horses check in because they do the 4 Gs, and they come back around and they check in again. Hey, I've been away, I came back, how are you? Okay, so for us, an informal, hey, high five or hi, like that from a distance. You don't need to run up and hug this person that you've been away from for 5 minutes when you come back, right? You can just be like, hey, I'm back. So horses have that same feeling to it, and an insecure horse or an immature horse or a really friendly horse or a horse who's really curious or any of those reasons might want to check in constantly, okay? And that means any time that the horse brings their muzzle towards your space and you've done a decent greeting ritual, maybe they didn't even touch you all the way or whatever, you didn't, but you've done a decent greeting ritual. Anytime they bring their muzzle in, you need to give them your knuckle because you said you would, okay? And they don't have hands, so they can't do a high five or just wave a hand and say, hey. They need to engage their muzzle as a way to reconnect. So if they bring their muzzle in and you don't give them a landing pad, they're going to sniff something else. And that makes them crazy because then they're saying, you greeted me, you said hi, and now where'd you go? What's going on here? Like, what part of you am I supposed to reconnect with? And then we think, oh, that's nice. He wants me and he's sniffing my pockets and isn't it cute? And the horse is like, are you kidding me? There's nothing to connect to in you. You're not defining your bubble of personal space. You're letting me crawl all over you. And that actually makes them feel insecure. Because when you do see the horses who are a little higher up in the hierarchy, they don't let other horses pop their bubbles, right? They might have a nice grooming. You can see a horse that's a really high leader still grooming someone or sleeping next to someone. And they can have all this wonderful sharing. But what they don't allow is the bubbles to be popped. And that's part of how they keep the herd safe. They're on it. They make sure those boundaries are always aware because the boundary line is the point of connection. We talked about it's like a magnetic, if you put your hands together, you feel the magnetic here. It's like a magnetic edge. And they want to make sure that's always there because if horses have to run for their lives because lightning strikes or a mountain lion shows up, they want to know how to do that and not bump into each other. Because if you bump into someone, you could trip and you could fall down and that's it for you. So the leaders are always making sure, keep those bubbles tidy, everybody, keep those bubbles clean, okay? So if you're like, nah, I don't care about my bubbles so much, you can touch me if you want. Then the horse is like, well, you're not telling me how to, what if things happen? What would happen? We would trip over each other. This is bad. So they don't actually want us to just collapse the bubble and say, it's okay. You can get dogs like that, cats like that, horses don't like it. Okay. So the greeting button, it's a point of interest. The GV26 acupoint is right here and it does all this wonderful stuff. It helps the horse basically recover after shock and it helps them get some endorphins and it does wonderful things. So when you are greeting there, you're also incidentally, passively connecting to something that can have really meaningful effects on their relaxation and their sense of themselves or sense of well-being. Now, if you have a horse who's really mouthy, so they chew on everything, they play with everything, they chew on your shirt, they do, or a horse who's actually kind of like nippy and, a little bit aggressive, this is a great button to influence. So what I will do in that case is I'll take my greeting knuckle and I'll go downward like that. I'll just go in and down, just like that. And I might do it 3 times, 4 times, 5 times until the horse says, okay, I get it, I feel it. And what you're doing is you're helping trigger a release of some of those endorphins and some of this, it's like an acupressure just by the way you're connecting. Now, if the horse is, you feel like they're too much energy, they're too volatile, you're worried about, you can't do it and keep your zero, you get really nervous about it. We will talk about this at the end again. You could use an object. So you could have a little touch object that you massage there. You could use the soft end of a crop. You could use a Nerf ball. You could use, there's a whole bunch of things you could do where you have a little item that you touch and you even greet them with the item. So if you're nervous about your knuckle, you can be like, well, here's my greeting tool because I need to keep my zero. And so if you nip on that tool, it's not going to bother me because it's not my hand. And just getting them over that weird moment of, I don't know what to do, can really help them settle down so much. So basically, even with that kind of object, you're going to reach in and push down, reach in and push down. And you might see a horse go, what are you doing? Because they didn't expect it. They don't know. But I've had so many horses say, that's exactly what I wanted. Because they don't know. They know something here. They need something to calm down. But they don't have metacognition. They can't think about thinking about it, okay? So they're just in an experience, they're stressed, and they're like, something with my mouth. I don't know, I'll chew on this lead rope. And if you say, hey, this touch, and they go, oh, that, and then sometimes you'll have a horse put their nose on the board and do it for themselves, and then kind of come back to you and go, do it again. They do it a couple more times. Yeah, that's really good. And then they might rub their knee, they might do all that stuff. So if you're not comfortable, you have a really mouthy horse, you can't stay zero about it, then I would recommend that you get someone in who does know kind of mouth massage, like a T-Touch or Masterson Method, or anyone in your area that knows how to do that, and they can do it for you. They can teach you to do it. If you can't keep your zero, don't try. Okay, you have to be able to stay zero. You can't be like because that's just going to make it worse. Okay, but ultimately, massaging that spot just in and down is a great way to sort of switch a horse from being in a stress state to starting to relax. So the next thing on our chart, we're going to go somewhere, all right? And we're going to go somewhere and we don't have to move our feet. So moving the go away face button is the next thing that horses do to claim a quadrant of the space in front. What you want to see is that the horses are on one side of each other or the other. They are not directly in front claiming a quadrant of space, because if horses are directly in front, they could rear. All right, that's what they'll do, because the only space they could claim is up, and then here, and they try to sort of knock each other over. Now, if you have horses that are playing, that's part of their game. But if you have horses who are aggressive, it's not a game. So when you're standing directly in front of a horse, you're greeting, just like if I'm greeting a person, I go directly to them. But then you need to step to the side, one side or the other side. But all your body parts have to go one quadrant or the other quadrant, because that's what horses do. Okay, you don't want to create a confrontation where the horse feels like the only way to get away from what you're doing is to back up or to go up. Okay, so when you go to the side, you're just indicating, I need your go away face button to give me room. And you could touch it with your fingertip pressure, which is just it's not stab away face, poke away face, drive away face. It's just go away face, please. It's just a touch, or it's in the air. And horses want both, okay? They want to know what your touch feels like, and they want to know what your aiming looks like, because they do both with each other. And again, this is just to say, let's let's do a little bit of the space work. Let's do a little bit of the spacious awareness. And I'm going to say, I'm going to claim this quadrant. You can move your face over into that quadrant. Good job. When you're done, just like when you're done with Sentry or scanning the horizon or any of the other stuff, when you're done with something, do a gone phase. So step away. Thank you. You could come back. You could greet again, which is now just a check-in. Hello, step to the side, go away face. Cool. You could do hello, step to the side, go away face. And when the horse does it, you could just do a little with your own. And they go, oh, you do it too? And so then you're beginning to share that, yes, we have we have connect and we have respect. Isn't that wonderful? To advance the observation skills, there is a little video on my YouTube channel. It's just under Sharon Wilsey, and it's called The Dinner Party. And it's 4 horses, 1 pile of hay, and I broke the video down into many little pieces, circles and arrows and things, and you can see horses doing this greeting and go away face and going somewhere but not moving. And I think 1 horse moves a foot. So that's really great for you guys to watch, because it's going to clue you in to something that's action, right? So it's a little video. So now if we're moving to the grooming ritual, so you've done a greet, you've done a go away face on 1 quadrant, and then you went away, and then you came back and go greet, go away face the other quadrant, and then you went away, and then you came back. So you've simulated the first parts of the 4 Gs. You could now try moving to a grooming phase and see what happens there. If you've done a good go away face, the horse should be able to respect your space standing next to them. If they're young, if they're a little bit emotionally stunted because they didn't spend enough time with other horses, or they're just really excited, that you may have to do several 20, 30 go away faces until they're like, oh, you mean all the time? Oh, okay. You may have to even just leave a hand, heavy elbow, relaxed shoulder, just leave it there. Just say, you know what, just stay behind the hand. Just stay over there the whole time. And for some horses, this is very helpful. How long do you leave your hand there? How long does the horse need you to? Until you and the horse have come to an agreement that this is always there. Okay? If I put my hand down, to some horses, this looks like an O. The lack of an X looks like an O. And they're like, should I come back? And then they do. They just come right back. As some people have a really natural O posture. So when they put their hand up and put it down, it really does look like an O. So this is an easy fix for creating space that doesn't create any problems. So now you want to do part of the grooming ritual. You could do buddy up, and you could do rock the baby, and you could do scratch the withers. Okay, so that's basically standing at the shoulder. And some horses would encourage you to stand at the shoulder by kind of moving their shoulder towards you. And so these are positions that are saying, hey, what do you like? If I rock, I'm relaxing the horse. If I scratch the withers, I'm saying, would you like some scratching? Would you like some touch? If I do a hold hand on the horse's body, that's relaxing. So when you get into a really good grooming phase, you may have the horse bring their nose around and touch you, because now they're putting you in hug position. And that's really useful later for some other things. So horses do it to each other. If they bring the nose to you while you're in buddy up and you're scratching or doing rock the baby, excellent. Okay, that means you're starting to get there. Putting it all together, we have a horse here. She had come in wet and cold, and so I did a quick greeting, and she was like very spooky. So we went right into go away face and boogeyman and sentry. I just did them all, and it only took a few minutes, and then she was willing to have me touch her shoulder, relax the space next to her, and she was able to start to drop her head and say, okay, I can start to be here with you. So once you've pulled these things together, they don't take that long. It sounds like a lot of information, but it's really just this, that, and we're here. It really can be that fast. So we are going to talk a little bit about facial expressions. Humans and horses both have a lot of muscle groups in their faces that convey moods and expressions. Humans and horses also have movable lips. Dogs and cats do not. They can move, they can do certain things, but they have fangs horses and humans can both do all these expressions. And it's really interesting to think about that. So when you're thinking about points of movement, if you're trying to understand the expression that your horse is conveying, if you just make the expression yourself, right? What is the sensation you're having? What does it create in your body? You feel tense? Do you feel relaxed? Do you feel open and welcoming? Or do you feel, what are you feeling? Because if you made the face that the horse is making, you're probably going to be in a close vicinity to what the horse is experiencing. So animals express connection, loyalty, displeasure, attachment, fear, aggression, and we're drawn to them because of shared empathic connections like pleasure and loyalty. In some ways, learning to see the expressions on a horse's face can help us determine their feeling state. So that's why we want to pay attention to it. And Karen McComb is professor of animal behavior and cognition at Sussex University, and she did a great study about this. So please feel free to go ahead and look up her work. For us, what we want to really focus on is the rapport building that comes with creating a beckoning face, okay? So the horse having a beckoning face looks like these horses. Low, the ears are soft and slightly sideways, the eyes are blinking. It's important when we approach a horse. Shoulders low, blinking eyes. I can't do the ear thing, but I can make my face soft, because if I'm approaching the horse and I have this face on, or I'm thinking, so I'm grimacing, because when we think, we grimace sometimes, it looks stressful to them. So just make sure you have a beckoning face and look for a beckoning face in your horse. We think about reverse round pen again. I did mention this a couple weeks ago. You want to be now in your X light, in your hold hand posture, and you're practicing skating around the outside of their bubble and not having them be disturbed. You don't want them to move. And watch other horses, because you'll see them doing that with each other as well. It's an important feature in saying, I don't want anything from you. You stay right where you are, and I will come to you when I'm ready. Okay? And it's a wonderful technique to practice, because it really puts them at ease. Another thing that helps you and your horse start to really build on your zero is practice these things from the other side of a fence. Can you do an O posture and have the horse come to you? Can you do an X posture and ask your horse to move? Can you reach through and do a grooming ritual? The more you can do on the other side of a barrier, the deeper your zero and the horse's zero become, because you build a lot of trust. Because if something doesn't go well, no one's going to get hurt. You're on the other side of a barrier. And for horses, it takes the pressure off of them too. Okay? So then when you do go inside with them, they're a lot more likely to just pick up where you left off and start with that level of calm and centeredness and be able to approach you with that zero. So we're going to talk a little bit about troubleshooting. So here there was a grumpy mare. She didn't want to approach, and just kind of feeling cranky that day. So here's where you can use mirroring to invite a horse to be connected with you. So, okay, I'll do what you're doing. You look that way, you look down, you breathed out, you look this way, you look that. I don't care if your face looks annoyed or you're not looking at me, whatever, I'll just copy you. Now, if I'm this far away from the stall, can you look at me? If I get really close to the stall, do you feel like you have to move away? Oh, okay. So you have a little more defined bubble. That's interesting. Can you get to the point where the horse starts to mirror you? That's when it gets really interesting, okay? And I call that copycat. So in this case, this was a stallion. He lives in a stallion barn, and he just gotten very tense about having anybody walk past his window. Now, he's not going to say, I'm getting tense, which is making people get tense, and I'm the source of the problem. He's going to say, people show up, tension happens. People are showing up, tension happens. It is just going to go together, okay? So when I was going to help him just create confidence on the other side of his window, I'm going to start with, okay, well, how big is your bubble? And the little yellow arrow there is showing my hand. His bubble was pretty big. So I did a breathing greeting from across the aisle. And what he could do was lower his head. And what he could do was aim his muzzle. And what he could do was breathe towards me. He couldn't do anything else. The ears are pinned. He's very defensive. That's okay. At least I got a little bit. Then I'm going to secure the environment. What about this hose? What about this wall? What about those other horses? Ooh, that he found very interesting. That led me into being able to finally approach him from a distance so that I can keep my zero, he can keep his zero, we can keep it quiet, and he can get low and start to actually greet me. Then I'm going to have a go away face, but I'm not going to get in there and touch his face. He's too defensive. So just in the air. And this is why you need to have the pointy finger be able to say from a distance, go away face, as well as being able to actually touch the horse. So the next level for him would be him feeling so much trust and calm that I could get in and actually just touch him, and it's no big deal. But this is where we start, because I'm just going to stand there 30 seconds to 60 seconds until he went doink, and excellent. Then I do a gone phase. I'd walk away, we'd both take a big breath, and then I would come back, and we would just do it over and over and over until he was like, I know what this is. By the end of the session with him, he was eager, he was beckoning, he was excited to have me come back. He started yawning and yawning and yawning. And this is where I know that horses want their zero. So if you can really believe that horses want to find their zero, you'd be surprised at how quickly they will use the intervention that you're doing to try to bring themselves back there. And ultimately, this transformation only took about 24 minutes. And then the slide with the yellow arrow, that's his handler, who was in the first picture when he was all grumpy face. So it was able to transfer this to her. And she was able to come in and just, reach towards him. And he said, well, hello. So completely different face, 24 minutes. Again, we talked about this a little bit before, but troubleshooting using a stick to decrease defensiveness. Now, I'm not exactly sure why, but some horses, once they're over the initial idea that you're holding something, okay, that's why you greet with an object, like to be touched with a stick of some kind. I'm not exactly sure why that is, but they seem to enjoy that kind of contact sometimes more than the palm of your hand. Okay, and this is something I wanted to mention. The hold hand is about holding. If someone holds my shoulder, I've got you, I hold. You do not use your hold hand for activating, for moving a button. Activating comes from pointing, okay? Hold hand means I've got you, I hold the space, I hold my space, I could hold a button, I could hold the space around a button, I could pat you. It's about connection and respect at the same time, but it's not about drive. Okay, so if you're doing this to drive, it's a mixed message. So when you're using a stick for greeting and then you're using a stick for grooming, some horses really like this and they just get a lot of relaxation from it. The other thing is to know that you can use your greeting ritual when you have a good one to greet everything. Greet the fly spray, greet your crop, greet your brushes, greet your saddle, greet a new tree, greet whatever's going on. And this is a fabulous way to bring horses into the 4Gs with all of the training stuff that's on your agenda. So your homework is to really study facial expressions, watch horses communicating over hay, watch for and practice beckoning postures. Practice your hold posture. No, this is not a push or a shove. If you need the horse to move, you need to turn into an activation finger. Okay, this is very important to not confuse these. Practice greeting over a stall or a barrier of some kind because this brings clarity and keeps you at zero. Okay? Practice approaching and awareness of when you are inside the bubble or not. Practice the go away face. And if your horse needs a million of them, so what? It's okay. They will get to a point where they go, I understand. Okay, they really will. Ask for a soft bend in the neck towards you for affection and connection when you're ready. That hug position actually leads to some other things further down the road. And rock the baby, hold hand, buddy up position, grooming on the wither. These are all, a way in to discover the authentic grooming ritual with your horse. Okay, so I want to thank you for being with us, and we're going to take a couple of questions if you've got some. And Laura's coming back over here with our new office pet, a little bantam.
This is Nugget.
The little bantam chick.
Also known as Little Nug. Thanks to a gal from Facebook who helped us name all of our chickens. The clan is called the Four Little Pecks, and Little Nugget actually was very ill on her first day, so we had to nurture her and feed her and water her. So just as a side note, we have some chicken family that we take care of other than playing with ponies all the time. All right, we cannot see you. No, we don't have, that was a question. That is a good question. We don't know what your faces look like. You can just see us, kind of a one-sided thing going on here.
Yeah, we can't see you.
I've been practicing the greeting ritual, and sometimes the horse makes a quarter circle around me and pops his shoulder against mine.
This is buddy up. Yep. It's both. He's using go somewhere to buddy up, and then he's basically saying, I'm ready for the grooming ritual.
That's quick.
Nugget. Woohoo. Yes. So that's great. So this is where the horses are saying, I understand you. Yay. Come here. Be my buddy. Let's connect this way. And also when horses are ready for the next level, they prefer to stand shoulder on shoulder with each other. So yeah, the horse is totally inviting you into the next level of connection. So good for you. So someone said, thank you so much. It's a lot to learn, but it's fun. It's so fun when we have an understanding. It is. And if anyone has learned a second language or another language, there's a baseline. There's a basic foundation that allows you to know how to begin a conversation, where to take it and how to end it. And that's really what we're doing right now with the fundamentals, is just get the conversation rolling. And if any of you have seen the First Conversations DVD, you see it in action. I take 3 horses that I had never met before. So they're like 3 case studies. They're very different personalities. And it's using the base first conversations to create 0 in each horse. And so that's pretty fun. I go over the buttons. We use one of our horses for that. And we just sort of take you through the journey of getting it started. And again, once you have these things in your pocket, you can start to use these things for a lot of other reasons. So secure the environment could turn into, putting a barrel out there and saying, hey, this barrel is part of our environment, and we're going to go to the barrel every time we do a grooming ritual. Then the barrel has a new meaning. The barrel actually helps create safety and connection just by being there, because you groom every time you're near it, or you relax or you take a nap near it. So you start to weave these core concepts into a lot of other things to create more and more rapport. So another question, one horse in particular has greeted me as per protocol multiple times. Now he comes over and looks at me softly and lingers on my hand. Is this just a check-in, or is he taking leadership? He also does a little nurturing nicker as I'm walking up. Just wondering if he thinks I'm the foal instead of the lead mare. I would not worry about that. What he's doing is saying, I really like you. That's all he's saying. And he's offering an affection connection. Okay, so that little licking is him saying, again, like the horse that pops his shoulder, this horse is saying, we could connect more. I think that we know each other now. And if he's nickering to you, then he's welcoming you back to the herd. He's like, hey, there you are. So when we initiate these things, we're taking the initiation to begin the greeting. We're taking the initiation to approach. We're taking the initiation to look at a boogeyman or whatever. And horses don't actually want to be the leader. They will take that role if they don't feel like there's an option. But the more that we show up, we have confidence and we have clarity and we're bringing this awareness to them, the more they feel really happy to be with us. And so what you're experiencing is happy. The horse is feeling happy. And so they're demonstrating that with nickering and a little bit of lipping and stuff. If you don't want something, like one of my horses loves to be touched, right? It's her favorite thing. But she will come in and request it. And sometimes she requests a little too firm. And so there's always an activation. Hey, respect my bubble. 1, 2, 3. Okay, now we can do it. So it's very quick and it's easy. And she takes that breath too. She's like, oh yeah, I know I need to back off a little bit. And so you come to a place where this is a conversation, right? And it's got to feel good for both of you.
And it's important for you all to stay safe. So
Yeah.
that's why the hold hand and doing a little bit of fingertip pressure activation for the go away face, or any part of the horse's body where you're like, you know, their shoulder gets a little too close. You're like, hey, can you move that over? And you just use your fingertip pressure and ask them to move over, so that, you know, their bodies are much bigger than ours, and they can really, like, with not much effort,
they can
knock
really
us over,
bump you over. Yeah. So what about a horse that bites? So when we were talking about that a little bit earlier, horses who are nippy are generally, what's going on for that kind of horse is something has happened in that horse's world to bring that about. And it could be from their past. It could be pain. Maybe they had pain in the past. Maybe they had a bad experience. Maybe, you know, there's stress. So nippy horses are responding to feelings of internal stress. And it's a very uncomfortable thing, and I don't want anyone to get bit. So go away face is, you know, there has to be a really clear signal. You cannot bring your face near my face. But really getting this button right here to relax with some kind of downward interaction. You can even use the end of a crop to just sort of touch here. And, you know, if I had like so I have like this thing, and, you know, I touch and then stroke down, so it's not my hand. If you feel that you can create a safe space where you can explore that, I have met so many nippy horses that love it. And all of a sudden they go, that's what I was looking for. Because it's sort of a cry for help. They're like, I'm stressed. I don't know what to do with myself. And I can't seem to let it go. And, you know, if it's a really intense situation, then you may need another person's help to navigate that. You may need someone to be there with you, watching and kind of giving feedback of this is what they saw, or, you know, hey, when you got a little bit closer is when the nippiness came out, and that kind of thing. I'd like to just encourage people to try to figure out how you can do a relaxation, and again, hire a massage person to come and do it if you're really uncomfortable with it. But tension in the mouth is a classic symptom of a horse who's gotten stressed. It could be stressed physically, emotionally, mentally. It could be old baggage. It could be new. It could be they've been in stall rest. They were isolated too long. But typically, horses who are raised in a sense of well-being and a good training all the way through don't have that reaction unless they're in active pain right now. So that's tricky. It's a tricky thing, and I understand it, which is why, you know, I try to give people solutions. And if you just don't want to be around their mouth, then don't. Right? So stay away. Put out your knuckle from 50 feet away on your approach. And then the rule is, when you're on a halter, when whatever, I'm going to keep my hand over here at all times. There's always going to be a go away face. Just don't bring your face in my place at all times. And I've worked with some stallions who are very on top of their people. And
photos from the webinar.
Yeah. And this was great for them. They were like, oh, you know, even if they're kind of tense and high-headed still, it was like they moved over and just said, you know, thanks for the clarity.
It was absolutely amazing to watch that interaction that Sharon had with that stallion from those photos, where it said 24 minutes. And it was like, he went from just really almost lunging at her, and at the point where she did bring out the stick and got down on his muzzle and helped him calm down, and then she would put her knuckle out,
and then he transferred it.
Massive discernment. It was like he went to get like overly excited with her knuckle, and he stopped himself.
Right.
And he greeted nicely, and then he went back to the stick, and he got a little bit playful with it, and so it was like amazing to watch. It was really, really cool. So it's just another way to be able to like keep your face out of my place.
Yeah. And it's key to not walk up to a horse and have your knuckle in front of your body, because this is a target. So when I'm saying, you know, do the greeting ritual, you know, for a horse like that, I'm saying reach way the heck in. Keep yourself way the heck away from that bubble. And this can be a way too. You don't have to they don't have to touch it.
No.
So you can be just outside of range and still begin a conversation. So, and it's, you know, I understand, and it's tricky, and I get this question a lot. So just do the best you can with it. Stay safe. Always stay
Number
safe.
one, stay safe for sure. All right. Anyone else? Oh, you're very welcome.
You're welcome. Yes.
We hope everything that we've talked about helps you out, because that is a tough thing. And it makes you feel uncomfortable on the inside too when you're so you're not having your zero because you're afraid, and that's
perfectly
human,
reasonable.
So it's like, that's why Sharon keeps talking about the space is really important. The horse can be in the stall, or you can just have a lot of that space, so then you can help your nervous system not get triggered because they feed off of that, unfortunately. And we actually recently just saw that.
Zero is hard sometimes, but essential. It is.
There's that.
It is essential.
This has been an interesting night here at the Wilsey household.
So
all kinds of fun.
when you're needing to claim that zero, everybody has their way. I like podcasts. I'll put on a podcast of someone talking about something really interesting, and I just kind of zone out and go into that. Some people like music. There's a couple of hacks. You can put your fingers together, and that triggers some part of your brain to go, okay? You can belly breathing. Yeah, you can do belly breathing.
You can hold a chicken.
You can hold a chicken.
This is great.
Get a chick.
I just woke her up. Sorry.
It's helpful. Yeah. Just want to share, one standoffish mare watched me do greetings with the other horses for weeks. She was finally brave enough to come over and was shaking through the greeting. Oh, she was the first one. Now she's the first one to meet me. Doing amazing work. Thank you. You're so welcome. Cool. Yay!
And that's the cool thing too. It's like the other horses are watching, and they are like, you can feel when Sharon goes into a barn and she is working with a high-headed stallion or what have you. The other horses around that horse is yawning.
Yeah,
I had that with one. That horse was we were wherever we were, and he was in the stall for a month. And the poor thing was biting. And it was that, like, reach way far and be further than you think you should be. And I was breathing and licking and chewing, just trying to help this horse be a little bit calmer. And the horses across the way were yawning and yawning and yawning.
Because all the other horses are like, thank gosh.
Yeah, help him out.
Help him out. He's driving me.
All of us out.
So we want to thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Take care, folks.
Okay.